So, we got the Torah last week. Last week we all stood at Mount Sinai, just like we did centuries ago, and received all of those lessons. Does the Torah itself change? Does the Torah itself evolve? The text doesn't change. But rabbinic Judaism, which is the Judaism that we live, those of you who are in my Tuesday study group, we often talk about that small little group of the Karaites who still make a home in Israel, who literally follow every word of Torah, and they think modern day Jewry, including those as far right as possible, and all of us in the middle, and then those on the far left, they think we're all out of our minds. The Talmud, Halakha, that's not part of their world, but that's Rabbinic Judaism. And Rabbinic Judaism is grounded in Torah, but things like Midrash, which involve teaching Torah and expounding it and allowing it to change. But tonight, what I want to talk a little bit about is that even in the Torah itself, even within the Torah itself, we watch how Torah has evolved. Within the Torah, we see an incredible example of spiritual innovation. In Israel, the Torah portion is Baha'alotecha, Numbers 8:1 to 12:16. And I just want to read a little bit of this so you can see, and some of you might know this. But it starts off by saying, the Lord spoke to Moses in the wilderness of Sinai. And pay attention to the specific details about time here. Usually I say don't worry about the details, but I want you to pay attention to the details. On the first new moon of the second year following the exodus from the land of Egypt. So the first new moon tells us it's the first month of the Jewish year. And what does God say on this first new moon of the second year following the exodus from Egypt? Let the Israelite people offer the Pesach, the Passover sacrifice, at this set time. You shall offer it on the 14th day of this first month at twilight, at its set time. You shall offer it in accordance with all its rules and rites. Moses instructed the Israelites to offer the Passover sacrifice just as God commanded, and they offered the Passover sacrifice in the first month on the 14th day of the month at twilight in the wilderness of Sinai, just as the Lord had commanded Moses, so the Israelites did. Pretty clear. There's a specific time to offer the Passover sacrifice. Remember, this was pre-gathering around our tables for the Seder. Now watch, that was verses 1 to 5. Verse 6 starts out with that word that we know there's going to be an issue here. But there were some men who were, it's a terrible translation, unclean, which is the opposite of, they weren't spiritually pure. And they were unclean because they had been around, a little gory, I know, but they were around a dead body, okay? And because of that, they could not offer the Passover sacrifice on that 14th day of the first month at twilight. So appearing the same day before Moses and Aaron, those men said to Moses and Aaron, unclean though we are by reason of this dead body, why must we be debarred from presenting the Lord's offering at its set time with the rest of the Israelites? Moses said to them, interesting point. I added that. Moses says, stand by. And let me go to God and hear what instructions God gives about you. So what's interesting here is that Moses could simply have said, you missed it, guys. I'm sorry you had that experience. There's next year. But Moses is willing to hear that there are these people who wanted to offer the sacrifice. They wanted to engage in this spiritual exercise, but they couldn't because the rules said they couldn't. You had to be of the highest purification level, and they couldn't do it. So Moses goes to God. Verse 9, the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, after listening to this request, speak to the Israelite people and say to them, when any of you or your descendants find themselves in a situation where they are defiled by a corpse, meaning they're not in a pure state, or, this is added, God adds this piece, or you're on a long journey and therefore not able to offer the sacrifice on the set day, they shall offer it on the second month, on the 14th day of the month, at twilight, a Passover sacrifice. You see what God does there? God creates what's called in the Torah. This isn't rabbinic Judaism, this is Torah. God creates what became known as Pesach Sheni, a second Passover. If you've got a good luach, a good Jewish calendar, it's actually still on the calendars. We don't do a whole thing with it. It's there as this reminder. But it gets even juicier in rabbinic Judaism, because the rabbis pick up on this in the Talmud. And in Psachim 73a in the Talmud, it says, it's not just if you're ritually impure, or you're far away and you can't do Passover, that empowers one to observe the second Passover. But, the rabbis say, any case of not paying attention to the arrival of the first Passover, or any hardship that causes you to miss the first Passover, if you miss it, do Pesach Sheni. That's Talmud. If for whatever reason you're disconnected, you're traveling, you're away, you're distant, you get a second chance. In a great Jewish text from the 13th century of Spain, there's a teaching in the Chizkuni. It says on Numbers 9, on this section we read, a person who is either at the time of the first Passover, far from spirituality, or far away from home. In other words, if many years from now, this is written in 13th century Spain, if many years from now there will be someone who, due to the time that elapsed since the Exodus, feels disconnected to our history and therefore would not observe the Passover ritual by having his heart in it, he gets a chance to do it a month later, assuming that within that month period, he's able to find that spiritual connection. In Judaism, you read Talmud, Judaism is all about majority rules. However, as we know from Talmud and other texts, the minority always gets a voice. The disenfranchised, the people in the margin, the people in the shadows, the forgotten, the ones left behind are still supposed to get a voice. It's why the Talmud is so long. Because, 2 Jews, 3 opinions. In the Talmud, you hear all the different opinions because every voice matters. But when it comes to this lesson about Pesach Sheni, when it comes to ritual Jewish life, the minority get more than a voice. This creation of Pesach Sheni teaches us that we must not only hear the cries of the minority, we're called upon to create, to change, to innovate, to ensure their inclusion. This section of Torah begs us to not be afraid to adapt, to change things, to include folks spiritually. And in many ways, as I read this week, it captures a lot of what this new blended community is going to be doing. I was so moved Thursday night, but I got to tell you, in many respects, I was more moved on Friday morning, and particularly on Shabbat morning, when Evelyn Goldfinger, who's here with us tonight, our cantorial soloist, who is one of the many gifts from Temple Beth Israel, was up on the bima leading services, and I got to sit in my sanctuary for the first time in 20 years and just do Shabbat. That was special in and of itself. But what was more special for me is I had 2 or 3 of our bar mitzvah kids, one of them is here with us tonight, who came. We had other congregants. Alan, you were here. Yeah. And our voices were just singing together. And it was a beautiful thing. The blending and the creating of something special. Doesn't mean, by the way, this Pesach Sheni, that we toss what the majority wants. Notice, it's Pesach Sheni. It's the second Passover. The first Passover is still the big deal, right? You're still going to have your mothers and your grandmothers and your great aunts would be very upset if you said, I can't make it to Pesach this year. Could you do Pesach Sheni? Right? That's not going to fly. But we don't ignore the minority. We adapt and we include them through innovation. But there's also another piece. I want you to think about those brave souls who couldn't do the first Passover. Had that small little group of Israelites who for some reason were not pure enough to do it. Had they not found the strength and the courage and the guts, because think about how much guts it took to go to Moses and Aaron and ask what they asked. They were saying, could you change what God decided? Had they not asked Moses to figure out how to let them observe Passover after they missed the opportunity to do so, had they stayed silent, which I think lots of us might have done, God's revolutionary response to create Pesach Sheni would never have occurred. And so this parsha, this section of Torah that we read tomorrow, teaches us that the Torah is crying out to us to stand up for ourselves, to advocate for ourselves, to speak up, because they did it they were very respectful, they were appropriate. We see other stories in Torah, like the story of Korach, where people challenge Moses and it's not good and the earth opens them and swallows them. This didn't happen here. They did it and God respected the question because they asked for a place in a respectful way in the community. And it's a reminder to us that if we're feeling pushed into the shadows, we're not going to come out of the shadows if we just sit idly by and just maybe complain about it to our friends. The Torah is saying, stand up for yourself. Remember from last week, we all stood at Sinai, all of us. And this lesson that all of us stood there is something we always need to remember. Sometimes, even though we're standing with all of us, we might feel so different from our Jewish brothers and sisters. We might feel left out. We might feel disconnected. We might feel late or just far, far, far away. But no matter where we are on the face of this earth, no matter what spiritual state that we're in, Judaism says we're all there at Sinai together. We were all included at the moment of revelation, and Pesach Sheni is this reminder that we need to include everyone else. We need to look out. And I watched Evelyn on Shabbat do this beautiful tradition right before the Shema. You gather your tzitzit together, and you hold them together, and it's a reminder that we have this responsibility to gather all the Jewish people together. Because as the Shema reminds us, we're one. And in light of that, I just want to share a beautiful poem written by Shana Lowenstein, which is called One. One voice against the world, one community linked together like the stars forming constellations in the sky, one journey, 1,000 journeys, 1 million journeys taken from the beginning of time, each different than the one that came before it. One nation, a Jewish nation, building a foundation with self-determination to grow stronger. Stronger than we were the day before, and stronger than our ancestors in the desert could have ever imagined. We're a blank canvas, and each journey is a colorful marker. As we each take our journey, we create pictures, beautiful lines connecting us one by one, day by day, pictures that will show us the world, pictures our grandchildren will one day look at and ask stories about, and we will tell them. We will tell them how we aced a math test, how we won a track meet, how we won the science fair, how we climbed Masada, and we will tell them about the hardships we faced, how we failed our chemistry final, wept as a loved one passed away, lost our favorite necklace, lost a best friend. These colored lines of our journey stretch across thousands of miles, each sharing a different story. Story that cause others to show the love and care there are abound to share, because life is not fair, and we each need someone there to guide us, show us good from evil, right from wrong, someone to take us by the hand and squeeze tight just to show everything will be all right, someone who will take our hand and go on our journey with us, because everyone needs someone to laugh with and cry with, shares memories with. Every journey comes with memories and moments that last forever, moments created with the Jewish community that we will keep for a lifetime, moments mapped out on a once blank canvas that is magically turned to color, showing all the different journeys we each took no matter where we were. The colors keep on building because the journeys never end. We go on day by day, creating new memories and new experiences. Yes, we are one. We're one community, one voice, one people. But at the same time, we are also infinite. Shabbat Shalom.